Hello, you're listening to the Neil Hampton Show. My name is Joey and I'm joined by Neil.
Hello.
And for the first time this season by Paul again.
Again? First time and again?
Yeah, first time and again. Deal with it. How is everyone?
Lovely.
Yeah, thrilled as always.
Yeah.
And what a week to be thrilled. My understanding is that the highlights from Tuesday only showed the second half. Has anyone seen that?
No, but that makes a lot of sense.
So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you to pick out your moments of the week. Neil, if you want to go first.
Oh, God. It has to be
Best
sort
of
of
luck.
Cian Harris, I think. Just his performance and just general demeanour on the pitch. I like a lot.
How, so this is my constant thing of banging on about, is giving players 10 games to settle. It's usually because the players that we have are so shit that we have to kind of give them a bit of time to not judge them too quickly. Does that work the other way around? Because I'm in dangerous territory of already being sold completely on Cian Harris. He's a lovely looking player, isn't he?
Yeah, and I guess we have to be sensible about all young players, don't you? Because a lot of the time they can sort of ride the crest of a wave and then it all takes a knock of confidence and then they become, Ryan Haynes, and it's not good. So I think, but what you can see from Harry's though is there's an air of quality about him, isn't there? I mean, it's just the nature of his game is just good quality. So I think we're on safe ground. He can do it. It's just, let's let him do it.
I thought, I was fortunate enough to not be able to get down on Tuesday, but I thought against Shrewsbury specifically, there were 3 or 4 moments across the game where he covered across the back three, outside of his normal sort of zone, really, really, really smartly. And I thought, me and Paul were talking on the way down about John Stones and about, do some players have it in their head or not? And I was saying that I'm not convinced with Stones necessarily. But Harry's, admittedly only after a few games, he looks like you can see why they've been raving about him so much, can't you?
Yeah, it feels natural as well. You watch him play, it's kind of, he's not forcing it at all. This is just, looks like it's a natural game, and every decision he makes is just, he seems confident with. So, yeah, I'm pleased with him.
This will be egg all over our face again once James Hansen kicks shit out of him on a Saturday and then completely puts him back.
Different beast, yeah.
Yeah, quite. Paul, moment of the week?
Oh, well.
Oh, sorry, I'd just like to throw something in on Harris, and I think you sort of nailed it with your last comment. The 2 games I've seen, he's looked really good, but he hasn't actually marked anyone or done any sort of real hardcore defending, because the teams who played have both been quite happy to come to the Rico and get a draw and not really pressure us that much. So, I'm not disagreeing, I think he has looked really good, but he hasn't really had a lot to do in terms of actually having a one-on-one player to mark. So, while I think he does look at the quality... Pardon?
He'll probably lose those one-on-ones, won't he?
Well,
he's tiny, isn't he? So he's probably going to struggle against the
but you might win them as well. I think, as sort of Joey said, I think we can't really judge him yet until we really see what he's like when he's actually put under a little bit of pressure. And one of the thankful things about both Shrewsbury and Bury is they didn't actually put us under that much pressure, or at least they didn't look to try and exploit his apparent weaknesses, which it appears to be his major weakness.
They should deliberately injure him in the academy so that he does the sort of Isaac Osborne thing of not being able to do proper training and instead just sitting in the gym for 8 hours a day and coming back looking like the Incredible Hulk. Because by all accounts, he's got all of the footballing brain and technique and everything. And I guess you could just tell him to get in the gym, but it seems more natural to nobble him, maybe with a balaclava on in the dead of night. Paul, you had a moment of the week to get to, yeah.
My moment of the week, we've made 2 signings. We've brought in another defender for money, apparently. And we brought in a striker who no one's seen play, but everyone's assuring me will be brilliant at this level. So that's obviously a massive positive. And we kept 2 clean sheets, which, 3 games in, if someone had said, look, after 3 games with that defence, we'd have only conceded 1 goal, we'd have all taken that. So from that point of view, I think that's all positive, isn't it?
Yeah. Can I get an early whinging about the striker, though? I mean,
yeah, why not?
Yeah. You talked about it last season. I thought it was a really smart point about when Ryan Kemp was here, and then he went back in January. You were talking about really what you need is somebody to come in for 2 years rather than even 6 months or a year or whatever, because it gives them the chance to bed in and actually develop. And this one specifically has really wound me up. The fact that it's a 5-month loan deal. Burnley are in the Premier League. There cannot be a situation in which they envisage needing him to play up front for them in the Premier League. He's a 19-year-old, untested kid. What circumstances are going to have to come to pass that he's going to go back there in January and play for them? Why is it a 5-month loan deal?
But didn't Burnley say it's a season long? I think that it is sort of a season long, but they couldn't say it's a season. I didn't read. There was an article in the Telegraph about why it was not a season long loan, but it was a season long loan.
Okay, so I missed that, but then well, you might as well scrap everything I've just said then. But even still, I think it's a smart point that you made. I'm surprised that more teams don't do that.
But also, I think the thing about it is, everyone's going, he's a Premier League loan player. And it's like, well, he is, technically, because Burnley got promoted last season. But, he's not, and I think it's one of those things that slightly irks me at times. Like, this guy's brilliant. It's like, we don't know that. Let's not put any pressure on him. And you sort of see Burnley fans, he's powerful, he'll rip that league apart. And it's like, you've never seen him play a league game. No one knows how good or how bad he will be. And I think the pressure on him, he's basically no different from Kwame Thomas, who's had a similar sort of, maybe not as high profile at Derby, but he's played for the England and the 21s and the 17s and all that. And it's just, I think we just need to take a step back. He's a 19-year-old untried kid who everyone suddenly said is a masterstroke from Moby. He might be, but let's actually sort of give him time to settle into the game, because the amount of pressure on him now for Saturday to score is sort of ridiculous, because it's like, we haven't scored because we haven't got a goal scorer, but we've got this new line, we've given him the number 9 jersey, and it's like, well, he's still a 19-year-old kid. If Marvin Sordell's fit, I probably wouldn't even put him into the team. I think we need to give him a chance to get up to speed.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. The question is, there's a lot of pressure on him to score on Saturday. Actually, there's a lot of pressure to him to even play on Saturday, isn't there, I think, due to the lack of a striker. I'm going to go for my moment of the week as the signing of that striker being broken on Twitter by Detective Ewan Rowe.
That was good. Yes, Twitter, that was good.
Who'd spotted that he'd been tweeting from Leamington yesterday, and then subsequently sort of that. I mean, that's magnificent eagle-eyed work there. I was a big fan of that. Okay, let's get on. We've got 2 games to talk about. So we've got Shrewsbury and we've got Bury, and a sum total of maybe 3 incidents across the 2 games. So, Neil, why don't you start us off?
I can barely remember it.
It's
kind of merged into a single experience. And experience is a strong word, really. It's just kind of existing in that space. But problem, I think my biggest annoyance of all of what happened against Shrewsbury was taking Ryan Haynes out of the team, because we'd waffled on last week on the pod about how he revels in confidence and he needs to feel confident, and then he puts in a performance like he did the game before, where he finally looked like someone who believed in himself, and then he just gets dropped, and then I just can't see how that's going to help him. And I think we saw, the other day that it hasn't helped him, because he kind of fell back into his shell again. So, I mean, I was a little bit cross from the outset, just dropping someone who's played so well just so that we could get someone Page in, who, from what I could tell, is a fairly okay left back. He didn't have any of the sort of redeeming attributes of Haynes, though. He didn't have much pace from what I could see. So that was the initial frustration. I think the overriding feeling from the game is that Shrewsbury are not a very good team. Jim O'Brien was largely anonymous. He came back. Deegan was anonymous, well, apart from just a few little kicks. And we were much better, really. It's just the quality. I still have last season in my head, going to watch those matches, seeing the sort of high pace. Even at the end of the season, there was something about us, but the games just aren't gripping me at the moment. I'm watching them, and there's just things aren't going right. We don't seem sort of threatening in any sense. I mean, we went with the the attack that worked by the end of the game before. So Jones started, Reed started, Ramirez started, and it was just another one of those games where they just couldn't get it right. So Jones got taken off in the second half because he was trying, doing what Jody Jones does, which is run with the ball. And I don't ever want him to stop doing that. I think if that's what you're good at, and that's the only sort of the main feature of a game, don't sort of stop doing that because you're not confident or anything. But the fact that it wasn't come off from him sort of meant that a lot of people looked at it and go, "Oh, he's having a rubbish game." And I didn't see it as a rubbish game. I just saw it as a game where it wasn't kind of coming off for him. He was trying what he always does, runs at players, and it just didn't work. So he got took off for Tud Guy. Reed's a weird one. I sort of bigged him up after the Portsmouth game because I thought, yeah, he's going to get some goals for us. He's got an eye for goal. He's got an eye for goal, all right, but it's about 20 yards higher than the actual goal. It's just he needs to sort of shoot it out because he seems to find space to shoot, and he did it against Shrewsbury as well. He kind of had a few sort of sighters where he'd nudge it to the side, but he was just no, not yet. It wasn't quite there.
To be honest, though, if you look at Carl Reed's whole career, he doesn't score goals.
No, he doesn't, Paulie. I've learned that. And he looks like he should, though, didn't he? He looks like he should be threatening, but it's that point where you actually have to put the ball in the net, which seems to be eluding.
I think you're right. I think he's threatening. I just don't think he does. I think that's what he is. He looks threatening, and again, we don't want to sort of have a go at people before we've seen them a lot. But I said this to Pritchard on Tuesday. He said, I don't think I've really seen Carl Reed. And it's like, you've seen Carl Reed play quite a few times over the last 10 years.
Yeah, batter us, yeah.
But the thing is, even though he's battering games, I don't think he's ever scored or even created a goal. And I think he's one of those players who looks good. And I said this to Joey as well. He's like, he's not someone who I think, he worries me. I know he's going to have a good game, but I don't think he's going to create anything. And again, on the trophy, I don't think it helps when you play a front three of Jones, Ramirez, and Reed anyway, because they're all players who basically want to do stuff with the ball.
But the amazing thing is, though, it worked the game before, and that's kind of why he played it.
But it worked against the Portsmouth team who were playing their reserves and didn't, and also
but it's our only reference.
But it did work, yeah.
But the thing is, it's not. I mean, you look at that you look at that similar thing we did last season when we had 3 attacking players who all they can do is dribble, and it didn't work most of the time. And you look at it, and you looked at that team. You went, that team needs a strike. You look at the team, you think that team needs a Tud guy. And then to bring it forward to the Bury game, where he went the complete opposite, where he had Tud guy, Thomas, and Ramirez. You're like, well, these are 3 players who need someone who can carry the ball and make space.
What are we asking of him then, Mowbray? Because it kind of like we kind of criticise him for changing a team when it's worked, but it did work, so he kept with that front three, and then it didn't work, so he changed it again. It's kind of how does he get it right? How does he get it right?
From my point of view, I don't think you do wholesale changes. I don't think you change the front three each game. I think you've got to let
or even in game in the Shrewsbury case.
Yeah, I think you've got to accept that when you're chasing a game in a League Cup game against a team beneath you, and it's all about winning that game, and the opposition also have to win that game, is slightly different from playing against a team like Shrewsbury, who are always going to come for a 0-0 draw. And I think you've got to look at the 3 players you've got and say, yeah, these 3 are all dribblers. They're all pretty similar in what they want to do, but none of them have got the ability to play with their back to goal, which is going to be big against a team like Shrewsbury, because at times it's going to be a physical battle. So I think you've got to look at the players you've got and say, what's the best combination? And having Ramirez, Jones and Carl Reed, from my point of view, when I looked at it, I thought that wasn't the right combination, because it's all about one of them doing something magical to score a goal, and it didn't work. And I could see it wasn't going to work, and that's based on my years of watching football when we have 3 creative players up front without someone being that focal point. And then when he changed it completely for the Tuesday game, you were like, you've gone too far now. And it wasn't until the second half when he brought on Jones, and we finally had a player who could carry the ball 10 yards at pace, that we actually managed to turn Bury around. But you knew that when you looked at the front three you started with, because you looked at those three players and you went, none of those three players can carry a ball. That's not their skill set. So it's about getting the right combination, and you can't just have one. The Portsmouth game was a one-off because cup ties often are a one-off, and it's a bit like the start of last season. Tim Sherwood went 3 up front against Bournemouth. They came out to win, so every game he played, he subbed on another striker because it worked for him against Bournemouth. And I think you've got to accept it's like not every situation's the same, especially between league games and cup ties against teams like Bury and Shrewsbury, who are very happy to come to the Rico and get away with a 0-0 draw.
Just like Portsmouth, though. They weren't going for the win.
Well, they were winning 1-0, weren't they?
Yeah, but from a penalty, which they were sat back as just as much as anybody else. I mean, I just find it difficult to sort of understand how do we criticise Mowbray, because he's making a decision based on what he thinks what would work, but he did this all last year, didn't he? He changed teams, and that's kind of what you're saying he should do. He should look at what the team that he's come up against and change it based on that. He did that all last year, and we criticised him for it.
No, I'm saying he should pick his best starting 11, and I think.
But that is not always for every single game.
No, I think you play your best starting 11 for every single game. I mean, already he's played 8 different players, and he's in the front three, and it's just playing against Shrewsbury. He swapped the entire front three, and you're like, well, the front three isn't particularly working, but changing all three doesn't mean that's going to work, because the front three suddenly just look completely disjointed against Shrewsbury. Just replacing 3 strikers because you needed a goal just didn't seem it. Well, not only didn't it work, it never looked like it was going to work.
I'm not sure. Sorry, go on, Neil.
I was just what would your front three be?
I'd left Jones on because I think, as you say, while I don't think he was having a wonderful game, he does create things. I'd have put Tudguy on and I'd left Reed on, and I'd have given them 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then if it hadn't worked by then, I might have had. I mean, I thought Carl Spence looked quite interesting when he came on. And, he looked like one of the only players who actually went for goal. I might have looked at him, but I wouldn't have just continually rotated. I wouldn't have put Tudguy and Thomas on and ended up with one of those two on the wing, because neither of them want to play on the wing, especially when you've taken off 2 wingers.
But I think that the Jones one, especially, was enforced, was it not?
Was it?
Well, yeah, was it? I mean, because it's one of those. If he was injured, it's that, you hear it a lot. So if he's fit enough to be on the bench, he's fit enough to start.
And I saw you tweet this in the week.
He brought him on. He played 45 minutes anyway.
I saw you tweet this in the week, and I couldn't disagree with that more. I think there are circumstances in which you can play X number of minutes, and then it's a choice of whether you want to start somebody on that or bring them on, depending on how long it is. I think he's got what sounds like a couple of knocks, Jody Jones. And I think that it was quite odd, the differing levels of response that I got when I asked if anybody knew why he'd been taken off. A handful of people quite vitriolically said that because he's been running down blind alleys and playing crap and everything. And then a number of people came back and said, actually, you could see him limping for 2 or 3 minutes before he came off. And some people said, he's carrying knocks, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I don't think that was a deliberate decision. I personally didn't think he had a poor game either. I agree with Neil. I think that a player like that, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I don't think he did anything wrong. He was just trying and it wasn't working particularly. So yeah, I don't think that was... I think that was not through choice. But that did make it more bizarre, I would suggest, that he then went on to make the substitutions that he did. But I do see where Neil's coming from as well. But yeah, I guess that is what it is. Outside of the front three, there was a back three, Neil. How did you feel that they went?
Paul picked on it earlier. I mean, they are looking fairly sturdy to this point. I mean, they're not being sort of overly challenged. I mean, Charles Cook's made a few weird decisions in the last couple of games, and I mean, Ricketts has been sort of up and down. I mean, he wasn't particularly great against Shrewsbury, but he certainly came into his own the other day. So he's playing okay. So as a defence, I don't really have an issue with them. Whether it's sustainable or not, that three, I don't know. I guess that's why we brought in this other guy, because he's already sort of alluded to this. He doesn't want to play Harry's every single game. He doesn't think he can play every game. So I expect to see, even though he praised him the other day, I expect to see our new guy in, fairly shortly. I mean, one thing I wanted to ask Paul was his sort of opinion on the middle two, because obviously we had Stevenson and Gadsev in there, who put in a slightly different kind of performance to the one they did against Portsmouth. What did you think about them?
I thought Stevenson's class. I mean, he just has a touch of class. Whether or not it's difficult. So, I mean, basically, the thing I liked about Stevenson was he controlled the ball with his right foot and then played a 20-yard pass with his left foot. And you're like, that's a bit above our normal central midfielders. And I think he always found time. But I think he also, Shrewsbury started to get on top of him, and he faded as the game went on, which you sort of expect from a player making his debut. Gadsev is really strange, and it's a bit like the Kyle Reid one. And I know we discuss this a lot about players like why they're at Coventry, and he's 29, and he's fine in terms of his pass completion rate is probably about 80-90%, and every so often he bursts forward. But against both Shrewsbury and Bury, he fell into that trap of overplaying in his final third, and he was very lucky not to be punished in the Bury game more than the Shrewsbury game, where he played one awful pass. But he looks fine. But
fine's the best word, I think. You're right. I mean, I don't think we're gonna have much trouble with him. He will fit in the team quite nicely without doing anything too special.
But I mean, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? And people have asked about the formation, the 3-4-3, and he might pop up with 5 goals this season, but he might also pop up with none. He's not going to get up to 10, is he? And
Gadsev,
yeah, and
he's got one already.
Not in the what I mean is league goals. I'm not really bothered about League Cup.
He's slagging off our only win, Paul.
I know, but
penalties,
what I mean,
penalties don't count either, just in case anyone was wondering.
No, but he also did this really annoying thing against Bury, where or was it one of the games, and he basically got to the edge of the area and then tried to play the pass with the outside of his right foot, and he sort of tried to and the whole team did this at points, tried to overcomplicate things with, look how good I am, look at this little flick. And you were like, we haven't scored in the league yet. I want you to pass the ball through so I know that pass is going to work. And I mean, it's difficult to say because we haven't seen him, but again, he's one of those players who everyone's, raved about a lot. And whether or not he's an improvement on what we had last season, I'm not convinced yet.
No, nor should you be. I mean, it's not a time to be drawing conclusions about Gadsev, I wouldn't have thought. This is a player who's never played in England before, playing the first 3 league games of his career. Obviously, League Cup games don't count. I think that the overriding thing with the Shrewsbury game, for me, just felt like we would have won it 2-0 if we'd have had a striker.
Well, I think Shrewsbury would have won 2-0 if they'd have had a striker.
Yeah, possibly. Okay. Shrewsbury would have won 20-0 if they'd have had Alan Shearer and Ronaldo up front. That's not the point. The reason I'm saying that is it's the specific point I'm making. Yeah, I think that we had enough chances in the first half alone to convert it, and I think Reid missed his chance. I think we were lacking height in the box. We were constantly aiming for Andy Rose to come up from right wing back, but I didn't think in the first half, especially, there was anything to worry about. I thought it was pretty good. It just was we just blatantly lack a striker, and that whilst this is something that we do a podcast where we talk in depth about the way the games go down. I thought of all the games we've watched in a long time, the one on Saturday was the one that I would dismiss the most as being sort of bereft of worth for analysing, because it was just a completely incomplete team against what in Shrewsbury looked like an incomplete team. And I don't know, I just thought...
No, I agree.
Yeah. It just looked like there was a way in which it could all click together, or a way in which that would be what we were faced with until Mowbray got sacked in November. They're basically the only 2 options, aren't they?
I mean, the interesting thing will be how teams start adapting to our 3-4-3. And I think we're very, very lucky in this country that football is seen as being, it has to be, what the bloody word is? It has to be balanced on both sides. It has to have a symmetry to it. So teams play 4-4-2 or 4-3-3, and they like to have a right winger and a left winger, and everything really nicely balanced. And one thing that came out of both games was one of the only times that both teams decided to sort of heavily go down one side. They really did tear that back three apart. Luckily, there's Shrewsbury and Bury, and they just didn't quite know what to do with it. And it'd be interesting to see what happens if we play against a team who sort of sacrifice one side and say, okay, we're going to put all of our basket in, or our eggs in the left-hand wing basket, and we're just going to destroy Coventry on that side, and we're going to heavily base our attack, 3 or 4 players on that one side, and see how the defence cope with it and how they move.
Neil, question for you before we move on to Paul's dissection of Bury. Was there anything that you've seen so far this season that makes any more sense of the death of Roman Vincelow? Or sale of Roman Vincelow, whichever you want to prefer.
No. That will never. I'll never be able to comprehend that one. I'm afraid, Joey. It's you could place him in that team quite happily, and it would make that team better. I get. What have we done with the money? Have we bought that one other guy, that defender? I guess we're. I would say so. That's what we've done. So we've basically lost our good midfielder for a even there, I'm not happy with that. So I'm not happy. I'm just happy. I'd rather have Vincelow than anybody else. But I liked him. He was a good player. So that's a shite answer. I
think it's a perfectly good answer. And I think that, well, it's just the reason I asked you the question was because of Paul saying that we got torn down on one side. And I do think that with a back three like that, you probably could do with a killer in midfield that's smart, that can try and give you a bit of protection like that. And God bless him, Ben Stevenson, like you say, looks like a player of some considerable class, but wasn't a murderer, was he?
No, exactly. I mean, he was. If you're looking at those two players in the middle, Stevenson and Gadsev, and trying to equate those roles, you've got Stevenson, who's probably your Fleck, although he wasn't quite, and then Gadsev, who's probably trying to do your Vincelot role, and neither of them really sort of succeed in those roles. They're just different players. So we're trying to find this completely, almost new way of playing. I mean, if anything, the thing about 3-4-3 is it's kind of really specialised. You have to have the right players in all the positions for it to work correctly. And I'll still maintain that I don't hate Andy Rose, just for the record. I think Andy Rose could be a good player for us, but Andy Rose at right wing back doesn't work for me. He doesn't have what we need from a wing back, and I feel immediately there you've got your imbalance, because he will always get the ball. And at that point, you want someone who's going to be able to do something with that ball. So, like a Cyrus Christie kind of character, a proper marauding wing-back of some sort. He is not that. And everything slows down when he goes there. So immediately, I just feel like the shape isn't working at the moment. And I'd like to get into sort of Mowbray's mind and wonder whether he chose his shape first, or he's doing this because this is what he feels the best he can do with the players he's got available.
According to Kieran Crowley, this was being thought of towards the end of last season.
But Kieran Crowley, he also said that selling Vincelot was part of a plan.
It was. It's Jordan Turnbull.
Yeah, I'm not having this. It's not. This side, this squad that he's developed so far, this isn't planned. This is happening. This is just because he's getting players, they're being made available to him. I mean, you can't tell me he wants a striker who's just gotten today. He's looked at, I definitely want him all the way through the summer. It's just, this isn't, you don't destroy the team that we had last year and make this one and say, oh, yeah, don't worry, this is all part of a plan. It's not a plan. He's making do, isn't he?
I think it's somewhere in between the two, isn't it? I'll make this quick so, Paul, you can jump in. But it's part of a plan B, I think, isn't it? Because I think there was a list of targets who I, by the sounds of it, didn't get 90% of. And now it's a bit of a scramble for whoever he can get.
It's a salvage operation, isn't it? Yeah. He's doing the best he can with the minimal resources he's got available. That's why he's selling our best midfielder to make some money, because he thinks that he's trying to weigh up and saying, okay, well, we need a defender more than we need that midfielder. But
missed out on Turner, missed out on Wilson, missed out on Leon Clark.
Which obviously all of those players will make us an infinitely better team than what we've got at the moment.
Well, but it also goes back to the couple of things we talked about at the end of last season. He's talked about he doesn't want to play Harris every week, and he also says he didn't envision playing Ricketts a lot. But he signed one centre-half, and it's like, well, you're either going to have to play Harris or Ricketts. If you'd have kept Aaron Martin, you didn't need to play both of them.
Yeah.
Aaron Martin was a guaranteed 27-year-old. And it's, if Ricketts gets injured, you can have a defence of Willis, who's 21, Turnbull, who's 21, and Harris, who's 18. And there's no guarantee we're going to bring in anyone else. I mean, we'd like to think we are, but, if by September the 1st we haven't, and Ricketts gets injured, which he might do, he's 34, you're suddenly looking at a very inexperienced back three because the loan window's gone. And to Neil's point, Andy Rose is a square peg in a round hole. But his only other option are the Kelly Evans twins, who are both 18. And it goes back to, well, if he's going to play right wing back, why not keep Aaron Phillips, who, even if he didn't rate him that highly, at least he's someone who could play in that right wing back role. And
he is a right wing back, isn't he?
Yeah, and we're not saying, we should have kept every one of the players he's got to go. We never said that at the end of last season either. But what we are saying is, those two players who had queries about would make this squad stronger, and we still need to bring in probably another, again, if McCann gets injured, we're back down to having only Stevenson in midfield. The squad is so thin. It's, letting the bodies he's let go seems really strange because he hasn't replaced them. But
I want to move on to the Bury game, but I do want to pick up on a point about Rose and then ask you how he did against Bury. Neil, you said that you don't see him marauding against, sort of up the line. And Paul, you said that you described him as a square peg in a round hole. Is that right?
Yeah.
I would suggest, and I say this from the point of view of the president of the Andy Rose fan club, that is him, isn't it? I actually think he is only marauding, which is why it doesn't look like he marauds.
Not with the ball.
No, exactly. There's no marauding with the ball. Everything is just, he's like when he plays, especially off the ball, he looks like a pirate trying to steam someone else's ship. Equally, I think he looks as ill at ease at right wing back as he did in central midfield. But there's something unnerving about him, I find, in the same way that Reader Johnson's a sort of chaos element in a team. I think I might be a bit in love with him. He might be he's not taking Vince Lowe's crowd, that's ridiculous. But I think I quite like him, even though he might be rubbish.
Yeah, that feels fair, because I feel like I've been tainted with this idea that I hate Andy Rose, which I don't. I think Andy Rose is an intriguing character, and I just don't think that's his position. But he's not played badly this season. He's getting in there. He scored a goal. He looks like a threat. He wins headers. Good on him. But no, not a wing back.
He looks a little bit like someone put J-Tab in that super soldier thing from Captain America, where he's all just running about like he's just trying really hard, but he's just much bigger now.
Just stretched, yeah. Yeah,
just a stretched J-Tab. And I'm all over that. That's great. How did he get on against Bury, Paul?
He didn't last that long, did he?
Oh, did he not?
He got injured.
Oh.
Good memory, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, both it was one of those ones where both players had every right to go for it, and their player got there slightly after Andy Rose and took Andy Rose out. I think Andy Rose is one of those players who is better probably without the ball than with it. He's definitely, against Shrewsbury, was our biggest goal threat. Just arriving at the back post, having that height and the movement just made him quite difficult to stop. But you felt a bit sorry for him against Bury. There was one opportunity where someone had it on the left-hand side and they were trying to pass the ball to him. And he sort of had acres of space in front of him. And you could see if the ball had been perfect, he was through. But the ball was behind him and straight to the opposition. And he was 10 yards out of position and out of the opposition's counter-attack. And that's one of the problems with playing wing-backs, is you've really got to get that ball correct, and it's difficult for him to know where his starting position was. But I don't know. I mean, is he injured for a long time? Has anyone heard? Apparently he had his knee in a cast.
We haven't heard any more, I don't think, since.
No.
So he could start on... I mean, I personally... one of my worries with Mowbray is I think he wants to play a really nice style of football, which is fine, but I don't think Andy Rose is particularly brilliant with the football. I don't think Jordan Willis... I think Jordan Willis's passing is pretty subpar at times, and me and Pritchard are having a discussion about it, and then we agreed to disagree about how good his passing was, and then he just punted the ball aimlessly.
That was brilliant, wasn't it?
And then in the second half, he just played I think the first time against Shrewsbury, had a really easy pass in his own third to Andy Rose, and he missed by about 6 foot. And it was just like, that's a really bad pass to miss, because it was both overhit and wide of its target. So, you know, I'm a bit concerned about building from the back, but... And then Bury with a better team in the first half. I don't think anyone could disagree with that. Our front three of Lemares just didn't work for him, just kept getting bashed off the ball. You know, Nathan Cameron, you know, he's a big, strong lad, and Lemares isn't. George Thomas, I feel a bit sorry for him. I think there's a lot of expectation on his shoulders. I just don't think... I think well, he's getting a lot of stick from the fans. And I think there's only 2 reasons they're giving him stick. One, they think he should be better than he is, and he's underperforming. Or 2, for some reason, like he slept with all of their sisters, they hate him. Because I can't see any other reason why they're writing off a player who's played 5 times. But
because he's probably not...
Well, the thing is, he's 18, 19. We just don't know how good he is.
But we might know. You know, it's like a scout, isn't it? You watch a player, you make a judgment on them, and you're looking for things. You're looking for anything that makes him special, anything that makes him stand out. And in his defence, he's getting on in the team sheet. He's doing well in training, but I want to win matches. I want to win games of football, and we keep playing players who don't play very well at all. And Thomas, every time he plays, or in the last 5 times I've seen him, he's not played very well. He's not done anything good, and I just don't like sacrificing, like, playing well just to get a young lad in the team to hopefully make him better. He might not get better. I feel like a bastard.
He might not, but I think in that first half, as I said earlier, I think the first half against Bury, you could see the front three were all looking at each other going, who are you again? And they just didn't... They needed someone else to... They either needed Tudguy to be 10 years younger, to be big, physical and strong, and Tudguy wasn't really involved enough. And it was just... The opposition had Tudguy in their pocket. So if your main experienced striker's not playing well, the midfield were playing garbage. They weren't giving sort of the front three the balls they needed. And people like Thomas and Lemares, they need runners. They need people around them who are going to break into the box. And the problem is neither George Thomas or Lemares is that guy themselves. And the thing that made Lemares look so good last season at times was he had Armstrong making those killer runs. And if no one's making a run for him, Lemares, being the player he is, just holds on to the ball too long because he's waiting for a good option. And it's a bit similar with Thomas. Personally, I don't think Thomas should be in the team at the moment. I think he doesn't look... In the same way you looked at Harry Kane during the Euros, and you looked at him and just went, you shouldn't be there, not because you're not good enough, you just don't look like you're at it. And it's a bit like that with Thomas. You just look at him and you just go, you're not really at that level yet. Whether or not you ever will be is up for debate, but I don't think slagging him off's going to help, but I don't think, I sort of agree with you, I don't think he probably should be in that situation.
Yeah, well, he's a sub for me. I mean, you let him, ease him into the team, stop starting the guy when he's clearly lacking confidence, clearly, not, like you say, not at it. It's just going to make it worse for him. He needs to come on when there's little pressure, and then we can see if we can eke out some quality from him, rather than making him the main man, because he's not there yet.
As well, very quickly as well, while we haven't got a striker, why not play him up front? Which I don't think he's been, has he? They've been a sort of pseudo winger.
Yeah.
But
which I don't think helps him, does it?
Yeah, and then it depends who you play around him, doesn't it, again? Because, again, he's not the sort of player who's going to play with his back to goal. So, it's, playing the three up front does require them getting either decent possession, which they weren't getting against Bury in the first half, or getting, hitting teams on the counter-attack, which again, Bury weren't that interested in trying to beat us, so their back four were never that high up the pitch. So there wasn't really, there wasn't the space in behind, but they weren't getting the ball in, we weren't dominating the play in their third or in the middle third either. So I think it was a difficult game for him. Not giving him any excuses. I don't think he played well. But I don't think it was the sort of game where he was going to shine either. And then McCann just looked like a guy who hadn't played a lot of football.
Yeah, he started quick and then very quickly faded, didn't he? It was. I thought we were onto something then, but then he fell apart a little bit. I thought by the end of it.
And it's also it's difficult, isn't it? Because I was talking pretty hard as you do because the games are dull. And I find it really hard to get excited by any signings. It's like McCann, from everything everyone said, is meant to be a really good player. We've only got him for 6 months. So we've got to rebuild half the midfield in 6 months anyway. And that's why I think, look, again, another reason I'm a bit annoyed that we sold Winslow, because at least he's your player for another season. It's just
at least another season.
Yeah, it's just another part-time player who... At the end of the day, I'm sure McCann's going to come out and say, I want to do my best for the club, I want to do this, I want to do that. That's fine. But also he knows at the back of his head in 6 months he isn't going to be here. So while I understand why it's a good signing, I'm a bit concerned that we're pinning a lot of what we're going to do for the first half of the season on a guy who's only here for the first half of the season. And I'm not sure how many games it's going to take him to get up to match speed. It might have taken 2 or 3, but he did look very leggy. And then, Gadchev, I found him a bit frustrating in the second half. I thought he slowed the game down a lot. I thought quite a few of our players overthought things. That Kyle Reid and Jones aren't, they're not in the same league as people like Murphy and Madders. They're just not. They hold on to the ball far too long. And we were discussing whether or not, how bright Kyle Reid is. I don't think he's, as a footballer, I don't think he's particularly football intelligent. I mean, I could be proven wrong by this, but I look at him and just think, you're the sort of guy who just holds onto the ball far too long, far too often, and it's going to frustrate the hell out of me. And I thought Jones was the same, where a couple of times he could have took guys through and he just took an extra touch. And I also don't think, and I could be proven wrong, Jones could get 20 goals this season. I just don't see a killer instinct now. I don't see a guy who's going to shoot on sight. I think he's the sort of guy who's waiting for the perfect opportunity. And we saw that both Shrewsbury and Bury, where he was waiting for too big a space. He was waiting for the easier option. And sometimes you just got to hit it early or hit it through players. You're not going to get that perfect opportunity. You're not going to get the perfect view on goal. You're just going to have to gamble. And I know everyone was talking about, we haven't got a goal scorer. We haven't got a goal scorer. Last season we had a 20 a season goal scorer. The year before that, I think we had Sammy who got about 10 in about 15 games or something stupid. The year before that, we had Wilson who got 20 goals and Leon Clark who got 15 or whatever. It isn't. You don't rely on one person to score goals. We have tried 8 different attacking players in 3 games, and between those 8, we probably had about 4 shots. The goals got to come from those players as well during the season. And to say all of our problems are going to be solved when it's on a goal scorer, we can't, not one person's going to get us all the goals, get us out of this division. And my worry is I don't see Kyle Reid or Joby Jones looking like the sort of people who want to score goals. And what I really found interesting about Kyle Spence's very short cameo against Shrewsbury was he was one of the only players who got the ball and actually had a shot through players. He looked like someone who just wanted to score a goal. And that for me, that was quite interesting compared to those other players.
If I can chip in.
Well, I've finished, yeah. Right now.
I think, so I agree with what you're saying, but I also think there's more than one way to skin a cat. And if I look back at last season, I complained about Ryan Kent at times and having no end product and blah, 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 blah. And in retrospect, I look back and I think, actually, what you did have was attributes that created space elsewhere that meant the team functioned better as a whole. And when I'm talking about bringing a striker in, I think that if you look at, and this is just an example, or two examples, two of the strikers that did particularly well in the Premier League last season, Okazaki and Troy Deeney, neither particularly prolific goal scorers, but that created space for other people to move into and do a good job with. I actually don't think what we need desperately is a 20 goal a season striker. That would be ideal, but I don't think we're going to roll the dice and get lucky again and find another one. I think it's probably the season where we have one that scores 7 or 8. What we do need more than anything is a different option than those attacking players we already have in the squad. And I think specifically someone who is a bit of a bully and that can create a bit of space and draw the attention of defenders for players like Reed and Jones and whatever to get into. Because in the end, I just felt like against Shrewsbury, they either got pushed wide or that teams were narrow and that there was, where they were banging crosses in, they were to no one, or they were having to arbitrarily lob Andy Rose up through the middle. So whilst I agree with you, the striker isn't the be-all and end-all because we need others to score our goals. Actually, I would flip that entirely on its head and say I think a decent striker might facilitate the scoring of goals from elsewhere in the squad, and hopefully that means that the onus isn't on them quite as much.
No, while I understand everything you said, I go back to I don't see Kyle Reid and Jones scoring goals. Regardless who's up front with them, I don't see people who have that killer instinct to score the goal. And I think that's my point, is not the fact that, we can't just rely on a striker. My worry is I don't think we can rely on those two to provide enough goals to circumvent the fact that we don't look like we're going to get goals from a lot of other places within the squad. I mean, it's the facts are there. You look at the squad, there's not many goals in that squad anyway. And you think, well, the way we're playing with 3-4-3, have either of the central midfielders got the licence to get into the box that often? Because that will basically just leave one midfielder up against the opposition on the counter-attack. It's going to be interesting to see how we try and get goals away from home, or how we try and set up against teams, because, Shrewsbury and Bury just came for a 0-0 draw, and in neither game did we see 4 or 5 players getting into the box. We saw 1 or 2. Against Shrewsbury, we put in about 3 crosses where the only person in the box was Andy Rose. And I know what you're saying with bringing in a striker who's going to be in the box, but I don't see goals in that team from those players. I just don't think, I can't see them taking enough shots or being that greedy to actually make it happen.
Neil, your 2 penneth?
I just miss good players. I
was just thinking that, really.
I looked at the picture of our team last year that won on Legends Day, and they were lining up, and then you put it compared to what we've got this season, and it just makes me want to cry. It was just good players and a good team who you could kind of trust, and then you've got a bunch of players at the moment, and it's just, they're all like either last year's sort of hand-me-downs, the ones who couldn't quite make it to the first team, or a bunch of people who nobody's really got a clue about. And it's a shame, because last year when we started so well, and we had all these new players coming in, people like Armstrong, they just set the world right straight away, and I just can't imagine Carl Reid ever doing that, or anybody else, or Sordell doing anything like what Armstrong did. And maybe we're asking for too much, but it's just been too much of a dip for me too quickly.
Anyway, we usually leave this level of negativity to pre-season pods or sort of January, February time. Yeah. But we're digging straight in. But I think you're fair, and I think you're right. I think all of us probably agree that whilst it doesn't look too good to start off with, we are all going to give it a little bit of time.
Oh, of course. Even the beginning of last season, nobody really thought Armstrong was going to be any good. Then he was good, but we were really slacking off the team in that first game. And it kind of, you don't know. And even Callum Wilson's season, I call it that, the Sixfield season. Yeah. We started that year thinking that was our worst squad in God knows how long. Yeah. You look back at it now and you think, bloody hell, that was a good team. Baker, Musa, Clark, Wilson, it was a good squad. So
that season started with us with not me. I hasten to add. I think everyone knows how much I fucking hate it. But invading the pitch at Crawley. And when we were 2-0 down, and it was like what 60 minutes into the season, and it looked like we were never going to finish it. Yeah, so you're right. I think we do have to keep our powder dry to a certain extent, but that doesn't dismiss what have been incredibly valid points brought up by the both of you.
But you also got we are record breakers.
Oh, this fucking record.
What record's this?
Go on, Joey.
Well, I don't want to say it again. It's starting to become so fucking cliche. The amount of time that's passed since we last finished in the top 6.
No.
Oh, go on.
All right.
What are you on about?
Record, never before in our 91-year history of playing league football have we gone so far into the season without scoring a league goal.
Oh, but that's an interesting statistic. But that's also like picking stats out of a bag that could. There's probably something that's happened every year that's been. I don't think that means anything. I don't think that means we're going to get relegated or it's just a quirk.
I'm not saying. I just find that. I mean, the reason I think it's quite an interesting one is I think you look at and again, I know you're going to dismiss this, but I think it's quite interesting. You look at the corresponding fixtures from last season, and we got 6 points out of those 2 home games, and you'd expect Bury and Shrewsbury to be near the bottom. I mean, Shrewsbury got pummeled 3-0, didn't they, on Tuesday night? And they didn't look, they looked quite a sort of poor side. And you just think, and it goes back to what Moby was saying in the post-match interview on Tuesday. It was, some of the players are beginning to look a bit tired. We played Saturday, Tuesday.
I hate that.
Yeah, I can't stand that. It's the same for everyone.
We're 2 weeks in, for fuck's sake.
But the thing is, last season, he also had a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds. But because we'd won, it's these young lads, and it's just like, I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to listen to excuses or reasons. That's just, for me, that's bullshit. It's like, next week we're not playing midweek. The week after that we're not playing midweek. Yeah, we've had a lot of games in a short amount of time, but as you say, everyone's had that, and that's just what happens at the start of the season. And that's you've got to deal with that. But also, you have changed your front three most games. So not everyone's played every minute of every game, but it's just. I think I'm slightly more worried this season than last. I just think this kid from Burnley or Marvin Sordell has to be sort of good, like very good, because I think you look at last season and almost apart from the year under Presley and when we had Presley, then Moby took over. The other years we've been in this division, we've had players who looked too good for this division, and I don't see anyone of that quality at the moment. I really hope Turnbull's as good as everyone says he is, and obviously hope this lad from Burnley's as good as everyone sort of hopes he is. But I think it could be quite a long season.
I mean, it's always a fucking long season, isn't it?
Yeah, but,
Of all let's get away from this and very quickly take us on a tangent. Of all the reforms that are proposed, I did like that one that was the 20-team leagues. Did you see that?
What, even them all out?
Yeah, so they're all in all 20 teams. I just think the season's too long. For us to have Saturday, Tuesday, I'm not on about players getting tired. I'm on about it being just massively inconvenient and shit for fans and stuff. Have you seen some of the away trips that some people have had to do as well in that time? I think it's unnecessary. I do think we could go down to 20 teams in a league and not have to fanny about with all this stuff.
How did they propose it? I didn't read much about that. How would they get it down with just more people getting relegated one year?
Yeah, 5 teams of 20, and then I think it was just like the bottom 18 teams in League 2 or League 3 or something, or League 2 went down.
So I think it becomes like a 5-league football league, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, the 3 rules I'd bring in, I'd make the League Cup. I'd get the League Cup out of the way before Christmas. I just thought get that. Someone has a nice trip down to Wembley like the weekend before Christmas. I'd cut this sort of transfer window malarkey. So we're not halfway through the season while teams are still farting around looking at players.
Yeah. I was thinking that the other day.
Yeah, either sort of end it, like have a proper transfer window, sort of from sort of June, July.
You finish it at the end of July, and then you can stop everyone whinging about, they haven't had a pre-season, or we've only just got them in, or whatever. Which is such a fatuous argument, because everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah, I think, and I'd also have most of January off for a winter break, but again, I just have, that as the other transfer window. But I just think, almost you could move the JPT, or whatever it's called these days. If you got rid of the League Cup in the first half of the season, you could have the JPT in the second half of the season, because most of them are going to be out the Cup anyway. But it's also the people who, don't worry about the JPT because it takes up games. Last season, Barnsley got promoted through the playoffs and won the JPT.
Yeah.
It's just, I think if you're winning, you're winning. It doesn't matter who it's against or in what competition.
Yeah, agreed. Right, let's do the world's shortest Bradford preview. We've got Bradford. I don't know really how else to put that. I'm not going to tell you their league position because it doesn't matter. We've only played 3 games. What I will tell you is that they drew their first game at home 0-0. They got knocked out of the League Cup. It really throws me, this EFL Cup thing. It just feels like that's the JPT for some reason, but it's not, isn't it? Then they had 2 successive away wins at Peterborough 1-0 and against MK Dons 2-1. Goal scorers so far, Clark, Cullen and Hewula Mayafula. Now I feel bad saying that, to the point where I'm thinking about cutting it down, but it's just a really difficult name to pronounce, isn't it?
Good effort.
Yeah, horrible there, mate.
Thank you. The star man for them, it's got to be Romain, isn't it?
Yes.
It's annoying, and again, as usual at this point in the season, I'm stealing this directly from Sideways Sammy. He picks out Paul Anderson, who's a creative winger, apparently, I guess.
How does he know these things?
I don't know.
Paul Anderson's been around for about 15 years. I think he signed for Liverpool when he was about 6.
But I haven't ever watched. I mean, the thing is, as you say about Kyle Reid, I've probably seen him play 5 or 6 times, but I just don't ever clock it. But yeah, it's gonna be sad seeing Romain, isn't it? But there you go. And as we're in, I mean, we should have a little bell to ring in something that we've done every year for the last 5 years. But let's mention that James Hansen's dangerous and big up front, shall we?
Yes. Do you think he's going to bully Harry? I think he will.
But who's going to provide him with the ammunition now we've got Kyle Reid?
Probably. Now they've got Mark Marshall.
Have they?
Have they really?
Yeah, they've had him he scored against us 2 seasons ago, I think, for them.
I thought he scored against us for Port Vale. He was at Port Vale a couple of years ago.
Felt like it was to Port Vale.
Now you say that, but it does say he's at Bradford here. Maybe he was on loan that season or something. That's very strange.
Talking about Port Vale, this is possibly the bizarrest thing I've seen in a newspaper for a long time. You'll never guess which player has been linked with Port Vale or Wolverhampton Wanderers.
No, go on.
Balotelli.
What?
Balotelli?
Yeah. It was like Balotelli spoken to Mourinho about getting his career back on track. And he's been linked with, I think it was Wolves and Port Vale. And it was like, that's wow bizarre. If he turns up for Port Vale. Yeah. I
mean, what? Well, at least Wolves have got Zenga in charge, so maybe you could see a link there. But yeah, I mean, it would be... I'd quite like to see him in League One, mainly because I don't think he'd do it. I just think he'd float around the pitch, wouldn't he?
Being managed by Robert Page, we all know he can take a bit of cheeky jives.
Oh dear. Yeah, you're right. In fact, Matt Marshall was at Port Vale for a season and then was moved to Bradford after that.
You know, when you said he could take corners with both feet, was that true? Was he genuinely two-footed?
Yeah. Well, I have definitely seen him take corners from either side, out-swinging corners from either side. Yeah.
Oh, I was just that intrigued because when I used to do the old stats, I took you at your word on that and put him as a sort of both-footed, and I was told off. They said that's not possible.
By who?
By the stats, Football Manager stats manager man.
Oh, really?
He was like, "Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure he's two-footed? You don't get many two-footed players." And I was like, "He is two-footed."
Well, whether he's two-footed or not, he is definitely. I've witnessed him taking corners with either foot.
And I believe you.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. And as well, I'm always wrong. So if I know I'm right...
Thank you for that.
I'm constantly aware of the fact that I'm wrong. So if I'm challenged on something, normally I'd be like, nah, I'm pretty much wrong all the time. This I know I've seen. So there you go.
On him. He did well.
Yeah, so that's Bradford. Do we want to have any other cliches for Bradford, or are we just going to do... We're not going to do predictions, are we? We binned that.
No point.
They're managed by Stuart McCall now, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Falling off of cars, Stuart McCall. Yeah. They've got Matthew Kilgallen at the back, who they signed in the summer, I think.
He's been around
Should be all right, shouldn't they?
Who knows? I mean, it's just... the thing with these names, like Matthew Kilgallen, you need to be able to hover over it with a mouse and it bring up the backstory about why they're playing at Bradford. Because you look at him and go, oh yeah, I remember seeing him and being all right. But then you bet you could look at it and it'd be like, oh yeah, he's only played 5 games in the last 3 years. Do you know what I mean? All of these
It's like Delfonso, isn't it? When Swindon just got him today, you look through what a great signing, this is amazing. And you're like, think about it.
Why is he here, Swindon? Yeah. What, did you think he's amazing and you've just got really lucky? No.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Carl Reid thing, isn't it? It's like, well, we've got him from Preston, but he went to the Championship and wasn't quite good enough. And you're like, well, maybe he's just a very, very, very good League One player who's never going to be able to make that step up.
Yeah, maybe not that.
Yeah, also it might just be the fact that he's 28, he's in League One because he blows hot and cold, and on some games we'll walk out and go, bloody hell, Carl Reid. And other games we walk out going, oh, for fuck's sake, Carl Reid.
Yeah. Okay, anyone got anything else they want to add before we wrap up?
No.
Paul?
I don't think so.
Oh no, I've got some. Sorry,
I
just realised. The guy behind me keeps calling Gantsev Gandhi. Now, this is strange. Strange behaviour. Stop it.
Yeah, very strange behaviour. But I'd say keep it up, as long as he's not sat near me.
Yeah,
crucially. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up then. So, final couple of calls from me to go over and check out thelonelyseason.club, which is Laurie, who was our guest last week's blog. And, of course, sidewayssammy.wordpress.com, which is where you'll find the pre-game previews and another set of match reviews. And, crucially, a pre-season team-by-team rundown that you can use if you've got your own podcast and don't fancy doing any actual research yourself. Paul, thank you.
Cheers, buddy.
Neil, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Bye.